Hello, everyone. I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you here in the next day or two. And I am, as John mentioned, I am from the National Office, Senior Government Relations Representative at National Farmers Union in Washington, D.C. If you haven't had the opportunity to come visit us, we are our location is key to the type of advocacy that we do. We can walk to the Senate side, and we can walk over to the House side on Capitol Hill, and we're right in the middle of Union Station there. Not to mention we have 2 Irish bars next to us, so we have lots of fun times there, I'm sure. But very excited to be here. I am originally, a little bit about myself, I'm originally from Virginia, and born and raised, and I went to school down in Williamsburg. Prior to my time with the National Farmers Union, I have worked with other organizations from labor to, I dare not say, but I am in corn country. I did work for the corn growers. So I have my background in ag from that experience, and also going to my uncle's farm in rural Guatemala, and he had livestock. And I will say that Rosie has lived for 30 years, so I guess there's not a problem with renaming and cattle. So starting here, I just wanted to say thank you to all of the work that John has done, really to provide a lot of feedback of where your issues are and what's important for the state of Nebraska. We really do appreciate feedback when it comes to reporting back to the administration, talking to the Senate or the House of Representatives. Sometimes we do get a phone call from the administration saying, and an example I have is the rail strike that was impending on December 6th. We need to have immediate feedback and need to know how it's affecting you, and sometimes it's off the cuff, and so really appreciate being on top of things and getting to know immediate need. So wanted to start off with congressional outlook. The midterm election was a very highly anticipated, and also I would say and entertaining for some, but needless to say, we were tracking this very closely, supporting a lot of our champions who have helped us on a lot of legislative wins to ensure that they would win re-election. Some of them did lose, some of them did win, and we look forward to working with those new members and developing new relationships, because it really is about having those relationships in a bipartisan fashion. Right now, the House midterm election results resulted in 213 Democrats on the House side with 220 Republicans. So we will have there is a slim Republican majority in the House, and also in this Senate, and things remain quite similar, the same on the Senate side. Looking here, we work with the Big Four. We call them the Big Four corners. So we work with both Senate and House Ag committees. And currently, before January and before next month, which is crazy, it's already January 2023 next month. But on the Senate side here on the left, we work with Senator Debbie Stabenow from Michigan. She's a chairwoman of the Senate Ag Committee, and we have a very good relationship with her, and also with Senator John Bozeman from Arkansas, who's a ranking member. So the makeup of the 2 senators on the left will remain the same as the Senate continues to have a Democratic majority. On the right side here, there will be a shift on the House side. Congressman, current chairman, David Scott from Georgia, will step down as House Agriculture Committee chairman, and Congressman Glenn Thompson from Pennsylvania, who currently is ranking member, is projected to be the next chairman of the House Agriculture Committee. Of course, there are many other names in the mix there as well, but we remain hopeful to continue developing a relationship with Congressman Thompson as we move forward in the 2023, especially with the big farm bill coming up, which we'll hear more about tomorrow, and I'll briefly talk about here in a few minutes. So fly-in, just talking about how important it is to have you all in DC. I did mention our location is vital, and it's very exciting to have all of you, because really our work is to be your voice on Capitol Hill. And so when you all come to DC and you all get to meet with your offices, you have the opportunity to go into offices that normally if we don't have a relationship with that office, we have to develop that relationship. You are constituents of these members, whether they are Democrats, whether they're independent, whether they're Republican, it doesn't matter their party. You are voting and you are a voter in their district. So when you come to DC, it's exciting to follow up on the meetings that you have, because you get to hear and be in those offices and get to have that interaction. As I mentioned during fly-in as well, this past fly-in, we not only met with Hill offices, but we also had administrative agency meetings as well. We met with the CFTC, we met with the Department of Transportation, we met with the Federal Trade Commission, and we had many other meetings like that. And so it was a very exciting time, and from that we were able to talk about many of our priorities, many of them really relating to, I'll talk here in a minute about fairness for farmers, about having stronger antitrust laws, going after consolidation, not only in meatpacking, but throughout many industries, and how that has affected farmers and ranchers throughout the United States. So like John mentioned, we did have Secretary Vilsack at our fly-in, which is very exciting. And as I mentioned earlier to a few folks, no lie, we're one of the first calls that the administration makes when it comes to an agricultural question. And this is something very exciting, very different. It's something that we continue to not only be in awe of, but really are grateful to be able to have the ear of the president. Two bills related to fairness for farmers, and really talking about antitrust protections and additional enforcement, and two pieces of legislation that were talked about during our fly-in are the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act and the Meat and Poultry Special Investigator Act. These types of legislative bills, they allow for greater price discovery and stronger transparency and enforcement for farmers and ranchers who really have no other alternative but to go to their nearest processing or the nearest to accept the prices really they're just offered to them. And so in general, we've been working here, as you can see, as an example, Abigail Spanberger here on the right, a member of Congress on the House Agriculture Committee, she had a very tight race, and I personally like hers. She's from Virginia, I'm from Virginia. So a great advocate for agriculture and transparency. She actually was part of the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, as well as other supply chain enforcement and legislation. She won her re-election, very slim, and we did support her for that. And really, we need to stand behind members who support our priorities in that sense. And here on the left, bottom left, we have a Farmers Union member who was called upon to testify before Congress, talk about how it has, how consolidation in the livestock industry has affected her farm and her operation. So these opportunities are very exciting, and I welcome anyone who would like to be a part of this to and encourage you all to share your stories and your voice. And on the bottom right is, as I mentioned earlier, Chairman Scott from Georgia, who is chairman of the House Ag Committee, who has many times talked about Farmers Union priorities. And I won't go into detail on the upcoming 2023 Farm Bill, as Rob, who is the all-encompassing of knowledge, Bible of knowledge, I'd say, on Farm Bill. But I just wanted to briefly talk about it's something that we, now that the midterms are over, we're really focusing on this and hoping that there will be more clarity on where both Senate and House will be going on Farm Bill. It is a very complicated bill in the sense that the writing of it is never easy. It covers everything from farm and conservation to rural development and nutritional assistance. The last bill was in 2018, and since then it has been modified to provide spending, for example, agricultural disasters, pandemic, the Inflation Reduction Act. I don't know if you all did hear that earlier, but it did, the IRA, in short, it was authorized increased spending on conservation programs. And then lastly, what we're looking at is also a shift in priorities. Republicans have questioned administration's authority to launch climate issues, climate smart commodities pilot programs, and have hinted at constraining some of that USDA spending. So there's going to be a lot of partisan disagreements, partisan agreements rather, and hoping for bipartisan support, because really this should not be a partisan issue. It really, we should move forward in actually helping our American farmers and ranchers. Just also other additional priorities that Rob will talk about tomorrow. We are asking for the inclusion of a competition title. There are 12 titles in total in the Farm Bill, and having the inclusion of a competition title would enable us to advance antitrust protections and really address the fairness for farmers overall. Looking at farm programs and also emphasizing dairy and prioritizing climate conservation and energy. Other ancillary issues that we are supporting, and just not saying they're not priorities, just saying we don't know where they would fit right now. There's so many places that they could, are ag labor reform, as well as looking at opportunities for veterans, beginning farmers and ranchers, and also mental health within the rural development title, as that has definitely come forward as a very big priority in our country. Rural development, this is one of, I added this slide, this is one of my issues, and it's a very large and all-encompassing issue that I believe that really came to the forefront because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and allowed for a lot of initiatives to be brought forth and actually pushed through. An example is the bipartisan infrastructure bill that did pass now a year ago, I believe November of last year. It was signed into law by President Biden. It encouraged Congress to pay attention to rural America. We've had 2 virtual fly-ins prior to the one we had in person in DC a few months ago. And we had many folks, they had to dial in. We would have a meeting with a senator, and a lot of farmers would either be calling in on video on their phone in their car, because they had to drive to a McDonald's a few miles down the road, and somebody actually wasn't even able to be on because somebody had run over their, unfortunately, how they get their broadband. So when you're able to see that in person and you realize that, it's very vital because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there are a lot of changes and additions to rural development. John mentioned broadband. There was a huge chunk of money that was added in that bipartisan infrastructure bill for broadband and build out. We are still waiting, and every state is different, but we're waiting to see how that money trickles down and actually is seen by folks on the ground. Fairness for farmers. This is a campaign which I'm sure you all have heard much about, that National Farmers Union launched in September of 2021. And the campaign encourages, supports legislation that fights for fair markets against corporate monopolies and consolidation. And as I mentioned during fly-in, some of our fly-in priorities really revolved around fairness for farmers. We highlight everything from legislation to really your stories about how this is impacting you. One story that really I've used on a personal level with my family and my friends is the cost of a turkey. A consumer this year paid $1.99 per pound for a turkey, and of that money, only 6 cents went to a farmer. And that is very devastating. And when a consumer sees that or hears that, I know I definitely had the ear of my family. They realized how bad that is. So we continue to talk about ways to bring this issue forward. And I have a video here. I'm hoping that it'll play, so please bear with me.
Hard work deserves fair pay. It's a common sense American value everyone agrees with. National Farmers Union knows firsthand the hard work that goes into growing and raising our food supply. It's because American farmers and ranchers are some of the hardest working people there are. But instead of reaping the honest rewards of their labor, farm families and their communities are struggling. Why? Because the monopolies dominating agribusiness are squeezing them from all sides. Just 4 companies control 85% of corn seeds. Only 3 manufacturers control 95% of large tractor production and maintenance. And a mere 4 multinational corporations control vast majorities of processing of pork, poultry, and beef packing. From buying seeds, inputs, and equipment to selling their livestock, farmers have little choice but to accept whatever price they're offered. These giant corporations reap record profits, while consumers feel the pain of inflated grocery store prices. That's why the National Farmers Union is standing up for farmers. Because consolidation hurts everyone, from farmers to ranchers to families to communities all over the country. It's time to bring back fairness into our food system by standing up to corporate monopolies, creating real market competition, ensuring farming families and their communities can thrive, and delivering healthy food at better prices for American consumers. Because fairness for farmers is common sense. That's what National Farmers Union is all about. Learn more today at fairnessforfarmers.org.
And then one more here.
America's farmers and ranchers raise some of the best food in the world, so it's hard to believe that they're being driven out of business. All across our country, big ag corporations have consolidated, squeezing producers and consumers while raising prices, devastating our rural communities, pulling money and resources out of small towns. There is a way to give farmers and ranchers a fair shot. Fairness for Farmers legislation will make markets fairer and more competitive for everybody. Visit fairnessforfarmers.org, paid for by National Farmers Union.
One of the issues tied to fairness for farmers that I've been working on is country of origin labeling. And it's fairness for the American farmer and rancher who has livestock. And again, on the personal level, I have asked, my father is a big meat eater, and I've asked him many times if he would go to the grocery store and if given the opportunity to choose between USA, meat that says USA or any other country, what he would choose. And the answer, I think, for many people is that you choose the USA label. And so we're advocating for not only this bill or legislation, we're working with Senator Tester, who has introduced mandatory country of origin labeling, but also working on the previous bills I mentioned and any legislation that really not only will support our American farmers and ranchers. And going to what John mentioned about Secretary Vilsack, here is a shot of the Secretary speaking at our fly-in. And I wanted to read to you all what he did say to our group. Quote, in many respects, National Farmers Union has been the architect and the designer in terms of the work we are doing in this administration in rural America and farm country. And, you know, this is a very special time to be a Farmers Union member. It is, I'm very proud to walk the halls at Congress and say who we are. You know, we have those buttons and we have our name tags and everybody knows who we are. And, you know, the way that you can get involved is to participate, share your story, and talk about ways and talk to us about what is impacting you and what you're seeing on the ground, and that really is important. And so this is very exciting. And then also I wanted to share President LaRue. I don't know if you can see him. He is behind the woman in blue. He was invited by President Biden for the signing of the infrastructure bill. And he is one of the only agricultural leaders amongst this group. You have agency heads and you have labor advocates. And so that was something that we're very proud of and very excited that when it came to the agricultural provisions in the infrastructure bill related to broadband or the expansion of rural opportunity and prosperity, that Farmers Union was standing right behind President Biden. And lastly, just wanted to talk about our next big convention. And NeFU will be having its 121st anniversary convention in San Francisco on March 5th through 7th. And we're excited for the policy process, excited for what you all will bring to convention. And as a government relations staffer, we really do appreciate convention, but because we come back knowing the policy changes and we come back knowing and having full direction of where our membership really wants us to go. So excited for that and hope to see you there. And with that, I don't know, John, if you wanted to open it for questions.
Is there any right to repair legislative element in the new Farm Bill?
We are looking for that. We're actually working on separate legislation on that, and we once, in addition to that, we're looking and exploring ways to incorporate that within one of the 12 titles for sure.
It's one of the issues that we worked with the Farm Bill. It was one of our competition issues that we worked was right to repair, and so we're working with the senators from Montana and Iowa. From different parties who are working on that, and so we're looking at both the legislative approach as well as we're also looking at perhaps some regulatory remedy as well. So,
Keith Dietrich, do you see anything in the commodity title that allow us to possibly make a move back towards non-recourse loans or higher loan rates of commodities that are more realistic in this environment?
So that is a great question, and I would defer to Rob on that one. So please ask him that question more specifically. But right now, I think now that we're starting off in January, there will be a lot more direction. We have our priorities, our Farm Bill priorities on our website. More than happy to share that. We did not include anything specific on that, but now that we're starting fresh in January, we're definitely going to be looking at more specifics and recommendations like that.
maybe you could comment about two issues that are right in the middle of our Farmers Union plate that has a Nebraska sort of tip of the spear involvement, and that is with Senator Fisher's bills. So the Livestock Transparency Act, which she is one of the co-sponsors, and then the other one is the one that is just, which is her bill that would deal with the issue of whole E15 evaporation rates and all of that, and the ability to be able to reach some sort of compromise on E15 as one of Senator Fisher's bill, and both of these are bipartisan bills.
The E15, I will defer to Rob on that as well, but we've been working with Senator Fisher very closely on actual bipartisan work, and I will say these bills the issue should not be partisan. And so during fly-in, and you can probably attest to this more than I can because you were probably in that meeting, but there are a lot of closed-door conversations that happen that are very encouraging. So sometimes when you see that there is a lot of partisan conversations, really we've been getting closed-door conversation and insight on how Republicans are reaching across the aisle to talk to Democrats on actually passing discovery, cattle price discovery. Is that Cattle Price Discovery Act? The bill has a lot of provisions in it with the Department of Justice on encouraging and actually enforcing transparency, which I believe, like Packers and Stockyards, was passed many years ago and has a lot of provisions that encourage transparency that haven't been enforced. So looking at this, it's like, why has it not been enforced? And so, the bill would actually put agency and put statutory language that would make a mandatory reporting and transparency. Not only on prices, but on how changes are made.
I would point out that we have been working very closely with Senator Fisher on these issues, and that in the case of the Livestock Transparency Act, where you're trying to do several things, you're trying to increase the amount of transparency in reporting, you're increasing the amount of such a very high percentage of the total market is captured in different kinds of contracts. And if you don't have access to those contracts and what they're actually paying and what they're doing, you don't actually have market transparency. So what you have, when you let it go to the extreme, is hogs, where you have 3 to 5% of the total market, and the cash market is used to price all of the formula hogs, which represents the lion's share of the contracts and the lion's share of the product. And so that very small amount of cash market ends up being easily manipulated to the advantage of lower prices in the contracts, so that producers are not getting paid a fair price for what they produce by virtue of a lack of competition in the cash market. So what Senator Fisher is doing is trying to capture and maintain that cash market while also expanding the price reporting provisions. And so it is in different kinds of market arenas, different percentage points used in order to maintain a viable cash market in those different regions. And so this is, a part of our historic efforts in Nebraska. Nebraska had a lot to do with why it is we have mandatory price reporting in the first place, thanks to Cap Turks and the passage of that bill. Forced the packers to come to the table at the national level and accept a national system for mandatory price reporting. And if you're going to have a competitive marketing system, you cannot have one that works and is the least bit market-based if you don't have transparency. And so without transparency, there is no real market function. And so it's been a pleasure to work with Senator Fisher in that arena. And so when she put out her press release on that, she asked us to contribute to her press release, and we were quoted as a part of that whole thing. But also when all of the ag groups got together and at her efforts, and we met to talk about this issue and talk about the different components of what it is that causes competition to happen or not happen, and how it is that we get to price transparency and competitiveness and all of those things. I thought it was interesting that she called on me to explain the technical parts of how all this works. Yes, so it was. We had an interesting conversation where the president of the Farm Bureau, who's the hog producer and does contracts, was explaining that he was perfectly good with contracts, and finally she cut him off and said, "Mark, there's an awful lot of us in the cattle business are not comfortable with how it is that you run your business model." We understand your model, and we don't want to go there. And so this is an important effort to salvage competition in cattle. Very significant. And the last thing I'd say is that If you're on our listserv, the press release we just sent out from Senator Fisher on E15, we were also asked to contribute to that, and so we were a part of her official press release quoting Nebraska Farmers Union and what this potential compromise would mean relative to utilization of E15 and higher blend ethanols. Very, very significant. And so when folks we work with do good work, you have to give them credit. And so we do.
Do you see, leading into the convention, do you see any issues that are coming that the delegates are going to be needing to vote on related to the farm bill coming up that need to be sorted out to provide better direction to staff as they step onto the diligence?
That is a very, very good question, and that is something that we are looking for. Actually, we will be having our policy committee meeting. We're having it in January. We have folks coming to DC just for preliminary discussions before we get to the convention, and that is exactly the answer that we're trying to find out. So nothing quite yet, but on Farm Bill, definitely there will definitely be some of that where folks will have to come to the floor. So wish I had a better answer for you, but we're definitely anticipating that here in the next month.
Let's give Layla a big hand.